Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Doing all right.
Great.
Happy Sunday evening. Back for another show of Ashes of Creation. What y'all want to talk about? Because there's not a lot going on.
Well,
so
I finally got a chance to review
Yes.
the video. So
I will say, and I think we've said this before, if you watch us, join our Discord, Neuro usually does very in-depth text on thoughts on the videos. So very good, very worth reading. Actually, I wrote it all down before we started because I figured we'd go over some of it. So I will throw it to you.
all right. Well, it was a nice sort of thing to kind of take a little bit more time and review it. The first thing, the question off the top about the places to discover stuff, I like the idea of there being caches all over the place for the first time people get to, like the highest peaks and lowest valleys and hidden places. But I like doing more with them. Leave the cache there. If it's a chest, a safe, whatever, have it be something that somebody's going to be coming back to interact with later, because there's more to it than just that. But you might not notice all of that if you're just opening it and it's like, woohoo, there's a prize in here, huzzah. So the intent would be, have those caches there. Somebody comes by and they see it and it's like, ah, crap, someone else was here first. But maybe while you're there, you see that inscribed on the inside is some message saying, hey, while standing here on this, time on this kind of night, you can see a constellation going this way. So that's the sort of fun thing I'd like to see. Just because you didn't get got it first treasure doesn't mean that there aren't other things of interest that could be done there.
I mean, the world is supposed to be dynamic and procedural, so I would expect it to be
Procedural.
changing. Yeah, it changes. It changes over time
Well,
based on what's going on with the world.
yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
gonna be the
there's
same every time you go back,
limits
so
and stuff. Maybe, yeah, procedural modular. It definitely has different states that it can kind of shift through and across.
yeah. So
I think they call them
should not
layers
be
internally.
it should not be the same based on the stages of the metros or the nodes around the world. In any case, it should be changing fairly often, just like dungeons and raids and all the other stuff
Well, what's
are.
going to change about the peak of a mountaintop?
What's there? There should still be some flora and fauna and seasons and all kinds of stuff should
Oh,
be
yeah,
going on
sure.
there, right?
All of that stuff should be
So,
going on.
so that should be whatever content is there should be changing. That there's stuff like treasures that could be found. It should definitely be different and not the same.
Yeah, EverQuest 2 has some areas that this reminds me of where you can get to, and it'll say like I can touch it or something. The character does something to it, and it's like Phantom X was here, or so you can see who the last person was.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of something first, reaching the peak first, but then maybe also having some sort of ability to say who was last there. I mean, that's always interesting to see who came before you. And I have to admit, I will click on it. I will leave my name there before I move on. So, yeah.
Okay, well then how about this? A form of item you can potentially purchase. It's a magic pedestal with a book and a pen. It's weatherproof, and it basically acts as like the little sign book to go through, like when you go to a park or something and you want to sign your name at the book in the guest center, kind of something like that. So
Nero wants Ashes to be a theme park. Confirmed.
well, it doesn't have to be a theme park. There's still going to be a lot of hiking. You can still get eaten by some sort of mountain creature along the way, but yeah, I kind of like the idea that certain like real interesting vistas and points that while you're within range, you would see it. You wouldn't just see the books from a distance because people would just be making, dick walls everywhere, and that wouldn't be cool. Like there would probably have to be limits to where and how they can be placed, but fun things like that I think would be neat to potentially be able to have. Though you're right, like at tier 5, tier 6, if that book's got 100 signatures in it, maybe a little outpost does get built up there, and you can actually take tours up there because players have actually invested the effort of kind of making a known, well-beaten path.
Well, I mean, it could be based on racial who has the populations are there. It could be based on religions, what the various religions are doing in the area. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that happens. So, I mean, theoretically, based on potential design, I don't know. It's kind of getting into Steven territory of what could happen. I don't want to overhype, but
we are theory forged. Theory craft is the nature of what we do. So
exactly. But I would kind of hope that some of it would be there already, just based on what's been said about the dynamic nature of the world already. How much of that they can implement, I don't know.
It's funny. I don't know if I've explicitly stated this or not, but as much as an explorer as you are, Diggs, like so am I. I do plan to go like Rogue Ranger or Ranger Rogue, whoever's going to have the highest mobility, because I do want to check everything out. So I'm going to kill stuff. I'm going to craft or harvest or whatever. But yeah, I'm also going to be the guy that gets to go everywhere because I like checking things out and just having a good time. And it's going to be a real pretty game, so it feels like that's actually going to be a fairly rewarding sort of thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, going to throw a shout out to Omi. Happy birthday! Very recently.
All right, happy birthday. That's right.
Happy birthday.
The listing shirt there. I'm sure a few people might notice. Who, of course, as you folks know, like might write story or something on a game that you might be aware of.
Are we just not allowed to say?
Oh no, it's definitely out there in the wild. People know what he does. Like I don't know that like the explicit like what he does, in the context of the entire team and who he interfaces with and who answers to him and who he answers to and all that. I don't know if all of that stuff is necessarily out in the open, but yeah, dude writes story. Dude writes good stories. He would have written them for like 2 other games that wanted to do like things, but money and other things occurred.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still looking for that interview that we can talk about story making.
I don't think we're going to get to do that one until after Alpha 2.
We don't have to have specific lore, just how you go about doing it.
Alpha 2 is not going to have specific lore. It's still going to be the throwaway stuff.
I know. I'm more again the process. But anyways, that's a different topic.
Different topic. Anyway, there was a little bit of that talk about the discovery skills to be able to use certain things to reveal different features of the environment to interact with. And I feel like there's got to be some sort of trade-off. Either it's a cooldown or an expense, or like, you can only use it under certain conditions or something. Because otherwise, I feel like it's just going to be almost like playing that old game Rogue all over again, where you're basically, you're mashing S like 5 to 10 times, going across every wall, trying to find the secret passages so you can find the loot and the other things in the place, or maybe where the stairs are hidden as you get down to like floor 5 and beyond, where I think they actually will hide the stairs behind secret doors and tunnels. So it's the trade-off with that game is the attrition, that your food is going to keep on diminishing, and you're going to keep on getting attacked by a slow, steady feed of enemies that spawn and find their way to you. So in this context, it's going to be, I would imagine, kill enemies. Maybe you get to run all of your search tools once in that area, and then, probably have enough time to go on to start the next set of enemies while your search tools recharge or whatever. And I think about what an action-y sort of game like, what Warframe or Mass Effect or Destiny, like a game like that would try to do in a situation like this would maybe be that you're being chased, or you have to rush, or there's like a timer or something. So you go across a long section quickly, and then after you're done with that sort of chase or rush section, you slowly go back through and check all that stuff out instead of quick teleporting out or taking the quick door to the entrance. So that way you actually have to take the time and, backtrack and see all the stuff that you missed and rushed through to find the places to use your discovery skills. I don't know how much of that sort of stuff there's going to be in the dungeon design. Telling 40 people to run away from this slow-moving boulder monster, I imagine that's going to be either an epic raid boss or the thing that wipes everybody because the coordination's just too much. But that's the sort of thing I think would be interesting, is that it's areas you have to backtrack to, or areas where you have to kind of like go out of your way to go to. It's not on the main path. It seems like there's something there. Maybe there's some visual clues that might kind of cue you in that there's something interesting, but hopefully not in such a way that people are just like search and then take 20 steps and search and then take 20 steps and just go through things that way trying to find everything, because it seems like a boring way to have to play, and kind of defeats the purpose of the skill and adventure of trying to find things in hidden places if you're just mashing search everywhere. The worst part is, I would imagine, high-level players going to lower-level places and doing that in areas where they won't get beat up as much, and being able to get the fat loot from those areas easier.
I'm curious how they keep that in a dynamic state, because I was actually just looking at the forums today, and there was a thread about data mining. This doesn't really come to data mining, but just as soon as the gates open, and people start collecting the information, I'm just curious how they keep it fresh. So that, person number 10 that comes through that dungeon has that same unknown as person number 1, rather than, oh, well, okay, I took 100 steps this way, turned to my right. Okay, this is where the door should be. Because I read it on some website somewhere. I'm curious how they'll.
That's the part that I wonder about, with like the pace and speed and kind of velocity of the world changing over time. Because the thing with Carfin and the things that we've seen where they were going around killing the dudes, getting the outfits off of them, that feels very like static, and that does not feel like something. Going to a place where which enemies drop which items does not feel like the nature of the game that's being presented to us. That feels like, WoW and EQ and that, strand of games, instead of something where, maybe you kill them a certain number of times and they start to change and they stop dropping this stuff. You've killed them enough times and they've left enough scraps and equipment behind that they're basically just a naked ghost now. There's no more of their physical vestments on them, and they've basically been farmed out. That's the sort of thing I would like to kind of see happen. And then at that point, instead of people trying to farm them, the focus would be, all right, well, how do we resolve these things? and get them cleared out because we don't need these ghosts haunting this place anymore.
I almost wonder if you could do it like, or if they would. All right, this is a dungeon that's big enough to house, say, 5 groups. So we're going to create 10 secret areas, but only 3 of them will be active at one time. And once somebody discovers and unlocks it, that one sort of vanishes, and number 4 will open somewhere else, or some sort of random pattern. I mean, I guess at least, yes, you will probably eventually obviously know where each one of those will be, but you don't necessarily know which one is up. So therefore you won't know, because what I wonder about is part of the reason, right, to keep some of these secrets there is so that you don't pigeonhole or exclude certain classes. Well, I want to take you here because you can do X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to take you here because you can't. That way at least you won't know what's active when. So you would, yes, what's the options or what's possible, but you don't know ahead of time going in. I don't know.
And there could be more to it than we know. For example, it could be that, and this would require like a voice communication or some way to coordinate. One person sees what the safe path is, and another person has to trust the first person for which of the colored tiles in the sequence they're supposed to jump on to not get exploded. So I could see there being sorts of things like that where there's puzzles where you have multiple people involved, where just because you're the one who can see it and spot it doesn't mean that you're the one who actually accesses it. They do talk about the idea of bringing one of each class as a party of 8, or one of each archetype, I should say. So it does definitely lean to the idea that in any given place, if you want to be able to find all the hidden stuff and open them and access them, you're going to need a one of everybody.
Yeah, group of 8 sounds different
And
conversation.
then you have the tank, and he lifts the gate, and then the fighter goes through and he punches the little punching bag, and he hits it hard enough that the number goes 999 on the display. And then the door opens with all the locks, which your rogue has to figure out which the right one is and pick it. And then once they've done, that sort of sequence of it's almost like an escape room at that point. But that's the sort of thing I could see happening, where they use all of the different abilities in some sort of way where they kind of force you to have a little bit of everything to get through.
My hope with Ashes is that people come to understand that you can't do everything. So you're not trying to do everything every time you go into a dungeon.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have a whole lot of backspawns to deal with. A whole lot. You're going to be in there forever. No, you're right. Like tier changes, season changes, every path won't even be open anytime you visit it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you don't want anyone to be able to do everything. You want to encourage revisiting areas.
And then you might have the the sneaky poison mushroom person at the front door that will pay you to pick mushrooms, but if you ask too many questions, they'll kill you. Because that was really fun to have in Alpha 1. That was hilarious. I like the idea that those sort of interactions can occur, that you have NPCs that come along and exist in certain areas. You see a deployment of 10 people from NPCs go head that way. You can follow them. They go in, they go, some enemy spawns or appears or whatever and fights them and wipes them, and you could have either been there to see it, maybe try to help them. It wouldn't really help much because they're squishy, and then ultimately be the one who finds all their bodies and brings the scraps back. It's like, yeah, you're 10 people. Here's their stuff. They died. Or if nobody sees it, maybe after a week or a month, the stuff starts spreading out and being dragged around in different places, and it's harder to complete that investigation. That fun sort of stuff. That didn't quite have to do with the skills necessarily, just a thought that came to mind.
No, aren't we not using tank anymore? Aren't we supposed to use
Guardian?
warrior, strongman?
No,
I'm joking.
Beefcake.
There's another thread on the forums. It's hilarious.
What's the name of it?
Oh, I was just saying why are we, I'm not an armored vehicle, and there's not going to be an armored vehicle in Ashes of Creation, so why am I called a tank?
Yeah, they will. The hell there won't be an armored vehicle. We don't know the extent of the
There
war
won't be a
machine.
World War II.
We don't know. That seems like totally Dunir technology.
Well, it's just interesting. You start thinking
make the magical explosion on one end of the tube, and it shoots the rock out of the other end of the tube. The rock is explosive. It's basically a blowgun, but just on a massive scale. Yeah, that and treads, that totally seemed like Dunir technology. I could see them busting out like an old World War era tank. Maybe not a machine gun, but certainly a cannon.
I'm just saying, you could make that argument for most any of the archetype names. A cleric. Cleric means you're part of religion, a clergy. Healers weren't necessarily part of the religious orders. They were people that lived out in the woods or something, right? You went to the healer, often was not going to the church, but we call them clerics. Rogues. Mm-hmm. Rogues are shifty people that you do not want to deal with. Okay, why are they in our groups then?
Right.
In Ashes, everybody is a mage, right? Everybody is a fighter.
Everybody can wear all the armor and use all the weapons, so there's at least that.
I'm saying, so, and
why are bards even fighting?
Why isn't everyone playing music instead of fighting? Or why? We could have had a different game. It could have been all bards.
As far as I can tell, every archetype in Ashes is a summoner as well. We'll have some version of that. What do they call it? It's the energy hammer. Essence. We'll all be summoning some kind of essence weapon, as far as I can tell. So.
Yeah.
What do they call them in Lord of the Rings Online? The burglar is the class.
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm just saying it's a sort of stupid argument because you could make that argument for all of them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Semantics. Speaking of things, March 8th, the aesthetic swap out. So if you want your cool green and purple stuff, get it now. Stephen was in Vegas. I hope he's recovered from the concrete or whatever he was coughing from there, and it was sounded like it was a long late night playing poker. So
that's why he was coughing.
That sounds like it was a good time, but I know they don't really have a lot of filters in those casinos, so even wearing a mask, you're still getting a whole lot of cigar in your face.
So you're saying that if he wasn't there, he would not have been coughing?
Well, I don't know that, but
yeah,
I'm just saying, I hope he didn't get the con cred from staying up at 4 a.m. And wearing himself out. And I hope everybody avoids the con cred.
Yeah, what is the swap out going to be? I forgot to look at that.
I can't remember.
Hopefully something that's not purple and green.
No, I could go for more purple and green.
They love purple and green, that dev artist team. The Ashes artist team does.
So there's a lot of... Okay, so that's the funny thing. Whether you've got the Vanu Sovereignty from Planet side or you've got the Joker from DCUO, like two of their main IPs at SOE had like a very strong purple and green aesthetic. So yeah, I could see that kind of, pervading through to other projects. It's a fun set of colors.
One person who is crazy having a penchant for green and purple makes some sense to me. Like all the different kinds of stuff that have purple and green and Ashes is a little much, but
Well, a lot of times the way purple and green is depicted is is done in like natural sort of like you saw with the previous set. It was the mushrooms and it was like the purpley mushrooms with like the green sort of accents and parts. So I actually feel like that stuff and this stuff kind of go together in a sort of way.
Oh yeah, I just mean for animals especially.
Yeah.
You got a lot of animals that are purple and green and ashes. It tends not to quite be a combo normally, but
Well, it's fantasy.
I know.
Then kind of looking through the UI stuff, it was nice to kind of see uh, the more of like the black and white sort of tests initially, how they were originally doing things, and then I guess I kind of wonder how much they tried those on like different colors and different textures, like a metallic version on a textured parchment sort of background, and all of that sort of stuff to kind of find what they like, what works well, what seems to stand out and be readable. And it sounds like that's a lot of their focus is they want a lot of readability overall, and kind of the scalability to go along with it.
Mhm.
Some of your
Could,
go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say it could be fun to see different sort of window treatments and stylings based on like race or archetype or some combination. Like, for example, the bottom of windows and things have like a little symbol corresponding to your class or a little decoration. So the one that's got like the five daggers sort of pointed downward, I could see maybe is more of like the rogue versus the one where it's just kind of like a little gem socket. I could see, fill it in with a color, and that could be a wizard. Um, likewise, you could have it maybe the more race specific ones are like the treatments that you'll see in the corners. This is the sort of thing. So when you're playing through your different characters and alts and watching other people, the UI is mostly the same, but you see it's just like these little differences. It's like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even realize that was an element that could be different until seeing on this other person's stream that this is an element that's different. That's neat.
I did like you had two ideas with the UI that or two comments you made that I like. One was the transparency component, the being able to see beyond the UI in front, which kind of goes to what I brought up last week about can we just move some of it to a different window so that it's not right there in your face. If not, then yes, I think the idea of being able to minimize down or add some sort of opacity would be very, very nice to have.
Yeah, for the example in my little write up was the ability to set 85% opacity for all of your UI, so that way you can still see everything behind it, but then also to have it set in such a way that instead of this being at 85% and this being at 85%, and then you've got this sort of like overlap you still can't see through, that it's just a shared sort of 85% transparency. So this will still cover this. It's just that you won't see this window behind this window. You'll just see as is, just like this, but at 85%. So there'd still be some amount of occlusion there, or things cutting off other things and not being able to see behind them. But that I think would be a really nice feature to maximize your ability to see what the hell is going on, be able to especially not miss things going on low down on the screen where your abilities are at. Not have somebody randomly walk up on you while you're streaming and you have a window open off to the side. They're like, oh, they aren't even watching me coming from this direction. And you just walk right up and start attacking. They didn't see you at all because they. Yeah. That's funny business, but I think that's a nice sort of thing that they could definitely add. What was another one that you said that stood out to you there?
Oh, also the notification system that you mentioned. So and I had never thought to have this. You mentioned that okay, you're in combat, something happens, and you're not finished yet, but so you get some sort of small notification to the side, and then once everything's done, then you get your full notification, which I think would be incredibly useful. I can't say how many times you're in the middle of like a really tough fight and something has happened, but by the time you're done and then there's no log, you can't go back to see what it was. So then you got to pull up achievements. Was it an achievement? What exactly happened? So being able to have something that pops up in the moment, but small, as you put it, to the side, so that it's not super distracting, would be very nice. And then still get something at the very end.
Yeah, like when it's the funniest thing whenever it happens. I'm playing Destiny 2. One of the, I think, 23 console achievements occurs, and it's got this Chiron on like the upper third of the screen and goes boop, boop. It's absolutely hilarious. It's out of character for the game. It seems like they designed it that way to be silly and obnoxious and be like, what the hell was that? Instead of being like, yeah, that was an achievement I was chasing. That's fine to come up if I'm, just talking to NPCs or if it's not in the heat of combat. But if I'm in the middle of a firefight and that thing pops up for a few seconds, I might not see something coming at me from up there. Those 5 seconds might be critical. So having it instead give me a little notification in the corner, and then when things slow down and I'm not being attacked for a little bit, then you give me the funny pop-up in the sound.
Diggs, you're being quiet.
No, if I'm being quiet, that means I probably have nothing to say. It's interesting.
Makes me worried. Just,
No. We talked about our stuff last week, so we're kind of going over Neuro's version this week.
You also had mentioned
Makes sense.
a no-skip UI for conversations.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That was more of a scroll sort of process?
Yeah, so instead of it just all appearing at once, having it kind of roll out line by line like, a JRPG or an old school sort of game would do. So that way, instead of it just being mash the buttons and skip it, it kind of encourages players to read it. Obviously, the skippers are still just going to set their read speed to the highest, if that's something that they can even control. But I kind of like that as a way to kind of slow things down and make people, potentially consider what they're doing instead of just, oh, hey, it's that guy that has the squirrel quest. Yeah, I'll kill some more squirrels. You need 100 squirrel butts? I'll go get you 100 squirrel butts, brother.
I think it's not gonna do that because the problem is that reading is fine if you're reading a novel, but if I'm actually playing a game, I don't want to read a novel. So it's really going to be dependent on how long that text is, right? What's the optimal amount of time to spend reading when you should be active in a game? I mean, because it's not really supposed to be a game. Hopefully, it's more that you're in a world, and if I'm moving through a world, I'm probably not going to be in the mood to be reading a bunch of crap. I'm probably would rather have the person talk to me rather than have me read. And we're not going to have a lot of verbal dialogue. We're not going to have verbal dialogue from these NPCs. So it's really going to be a matter of what's the sweet spot for how much text is on the screen, how much is a person going to want to read, and how long
Yeah.
are they spend reading.
I wondered about that too. So usually first go around, like I'm somebody that will read everything. Like I don't mind. Or if I pick up a new lore, actually read it through. Now coming through with a second character or something like that, I'm also the person that will blow through it all. Skip. Okay, I already know this, done this. Next, let's keep going. Because the goals are a little bit different. So
So Terridan says I often go back to review quest text if it's available, and I would say that's kind of what I liked about what I saw about the journal. Is it seems like not only can you go back to read that text, but even after you've completed the quest, you can go back and see what you've done. I hope the journal retains that because I kind of forget, and I'd like a chronicle of what my character has done somehow, some way, um, somewhere, and it doesn't even have to be where we saw it on the UE so far. But if I can go somewhere and uh, pull up that part of the journal of completed quest, that would really be nice.
Which I think you had.
And I'd rather read. Yeah, I was going to say I'd rather read that stuff later when I'm in a mood to read stuff
Yeah.
versus being stuck like I'm really ready to go out and actively do some stuff, but I've got to stop and read in the moment. That's
Which I'll leave this to you, Nora, but you had commented on this as well. I think having some sort of process for that.
Yeah, and I'll just read verbatim what I wrote here. It would be a lot to add, but I would love to have a very comprehensive journal for conversations, not just quest-related ones I'm aware of, but interesting details of all kinds that would go in corresponding categories based on their input type. If the old fisherman you saved from the creature he fished up that was trying to eat him tells you about the place to spot a particular constellation that he used to rely on to protect him, while he was useful enough to travel there, you'll get that added as a rumor to your stargazing section of the journal. Something like that. So as you get little hints and rumors and tips and maybe things that you've read and observed, they can start to get kind of categorized. Maybe who the NPC is, if there's someone somewhat persistent, their name will be attached to it so you can go back and potentially talk to them before, events sweep them away one way or another. And then I guess the other sort of thing I was thinking with that would be an unfriendly list, like NPCs you've interfaced with, you botched their quest, you tried to date their wife, whatever it is, you pissed them off. Now they're in your book in the unfriendly list. Not that you're unfriendly to them, but they're unfriendly to you. And so you kind of remember, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't, try to buy stuff off of that guy. He's going to charge me an arm and a leg if he even sells anything to me. That's a nice sort of thing that I'd like to be able to add and be able to have some inkling of who I've slighted and won't be able to rely on to try to do things. So, oh wait, I just read this thing. This person on this other server talked to this dude and made good friends with them, and then he was able to do this quest. It's like, yeah, we all told that dude to go screw. Well, oh well.
And did I see options that seem to be based so for ourselves, answers for ourselves? Did I see something that seemed to be based on personality? No?
Do what now?
I thought I kind of did I see in the
Backgrounds.
No. I
No?
mean, in I don't know if it was from backgrounds because I don't think backgrounds are in yet, but it could have been. But I thought that on one of the images of dialogue, I might have seen answers that would be our answers, how we're responding to the um, NPCs would
Oh,
be
I
based
see.
similarly on personality or something like that. Um, thought I saw an image of that for some reason. But I'm hoping that we have stuff like that that will, you know, not just be generic answers as we're moving through dialogue with NPCs.
How long until we get Chat GPT mixed in?
This ain't that game.
That'd be fun.
There'll be a game that does that. This ain't that.
Why
And
not?
that game might become real cringe real fast too. I mean, I feel like this right now, with that suggestion you said, is Richard Garriott's time to shine, to come back through and make like an old school Ultima game but using Chat GPT to drive like the narratives and the dialogues and stuff. Like I think that's the sort of thing that would actually be pretty neat to see. Don't even need fancy graphics. You can do it back in the old like 8-bit, 4-bit, whatever style.
I'm just saying. One day.
One day.
Yeah, that might even be before Ashes releases.
The fully well, I mean, somebody could just rig up the fully procedural MMORPG that just kind of goes on forever in a distance, and just does that sort of thing. But because it's all procedural, it's all cheap and crappy, and it's based on whatever they've been able to feed it.
Mm-hmm.
We should have our fourth host just be that. Give it a voice. That would be hilarious.
So there was one thing I wanted to kind of double back on. The page that showed all the class icons things, that was definitely just, as he said, ideation on the archetype iconography. Those are just variations of, and concepts. None of those were like the locked in ones. We were just getting a little sampling there. So the one thing though that I kind of noticed about that, I don't really like weapons and attire being associated with the classes, because I can be a fighter and be wearing a brimmed cap that comes to a point, a wizard's hat, whatever, it's just the hat that I want to wear, but I'm otherwise wearing plate armor. That doesn't make me a wizard. That means I'm a fighter wearing a cloth head associated with wizards. So
why did you bring this up? I'm missing where this is coming from.
This is on the thoughts of the when we saw the page showing all the different icons of the different archetypes.
Okay.
I remember last week there was maybe a bit of a misunderstanding as to whether those were actually the ones that they were planning to use, or if those were just
we had questioned that
tests and stuff. So this is clarifying.
Those should be for the spells, right?
No, the ones that just represent like the single symbol to represent the archetype.
Yeah, I think that's still representing skills and abilities. I think that's what that's for. So you can kind of understand that that's associated with the archetype. I don't think that has anything to do with weapons or gear.
Right. No, but that's exactly what I'm saying, is if you associate a piece of attire with an archetype, it
we already
kind
know
of,
they're not going to do that.
It gives the thought of like, oh well, if I want to wear cloaks, or I have to wear a cloak if I'm a rogue, sort of thing, like that makes a person wear, or like a silhouette of a hooded cloak for the rogue kind of weird. That could be a ranger, for example. Rangers wear cloaks.
But we know they're not going to do that. So I'm wondering why you're bringing it up as if they might do it. That's where I'm lost.
Did they actually say they explicitly weren't going to do it? That we weren't going to see a sword for the fighter or a shield for the tank?
Right. So why were you saying if they did?
I guess I maybe missed that part while I was taking notes, but it sounded like that wasn't mentioned. Maybe I heard something wrong. Okay, never mind.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, it might not even be called a tank here soon.
I think the iconography is going to be used with spells and abilities, not with gear and equipment. That's my understanding.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about the ones where they're saying specifically the graphics to represent the archetypes.
Yes, again, associated with skills and abilities. And I'm not sure why you're putting that together with gear and equipment.
No, not the skills and abilities. If you're looking at a like the character creation screen, and it says choose your archetype, and you're looking at all the symbols for the different archetypes.
Okay.
The
What does that
association,
have to do with cloaks and
if
gear and equipment?
rogues have a cloak for their graphic for that archetype, it creates this implication that, oh, you're going to wear a cloak, or you have to wear a cloak, because people have played MMOs and they just think, oh, that's the sword class. Well, you're going to use a sword. Oh, that's the shield class. You use a shield.
Yeah,
That's why I'm thinking using the different symbols that aren't pieces of equipment might be a better way to go for the representative graphics for each of the specific archetypes.
I don't think so, because symbols are just symbols. They're not intended to be necessarily um, right. Uh, right. It's symbols that are used to be easily recognized rather than fixing you to you can only be this thing. That's not the way symbols work, right? Because one symbol could mean many different things. This is especially true if you're talking about Japanese or lots of other symbolic languages that aren't using just a standard alphabet. But
Yeah, that's fair.
even if you think about, one word could have many different meanings, even with the same spelling. So, um, yeah, it's just symbology there. It's not meant to mean that you have to wear only that equipment or whatever.
So another thing that I want to clarify from last week was the subject of um, the crafting window we saw. They did clarify that was specifically the fast crafting, not manual crafting. What we saw in the stream will probably have a lot more to it by the time we see Alpha 2. So I know we picked that one apart, but I realize that is just the fast crafting. And hey, it's nice to know you can pick your materials in the fast crafting too. Now going back to the UI, some of the UI stuff, they did ask the feedback that they specifically want was, first of all, actual hands-on feedback. They want to know, once we're actually playing. So right now, they want us to play Alpha 2 just as much as we want us to play Alpha 2, as far as feedback goes. Terms of
gotta
features,
get that upgrade first.
Yeah. So in terms of the features that we want to see, we've got to be very specific about them. Don't just say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if blah, blah, blah. Like, you just give examples, give details. If there's a specific game that you like the way something was handled, or something that was done poorly that you're hoping that they're able to avoid or make sure doesn't become a problem, bring those things up, be detailed, be specific. And in particular, post these to the UI comments thread that they've put up on the forum. Or just
Not
make your
like
own
it was
post
in
if you've
Alpha 1.
got something. What was that?
Crafting should not be like it was in Alpha 1.
It was mostly broken in Alpha 1, so I agree.
Yeah. Yes, when they're saying give examples from specific games, that's what I would use.
Yeah, it sounds like it was already the build for 511 is in QA's hands as of last week. So no idea where they're at with it, but it's probably coming along here pretty soon. Or maybe the QA had already finished with it and they were pushing it to mainline. Either way, it's an adventure. The journal ties to an archive. Apparently, that was a leak. The journal may tie to some sort of archive, though that actually makes sense, just having a giant database of all the encounters and interactions that could possibly occur. And then when people have engaged with them, you just put like the hash reference to that specific interaction on the journal, and you save and load from that. Like I would imagine someone doing data science with like regex and stuff would do.
Well, and yeah, kind of a leak, but hadn't Stephen? They'd already talked about what did they call it? Memories. What was the sort of visual
Yeah, the
replay?
memory shard thing, so you can replay the events that occur.
Yeah, which is sort of similar in style to turning the journal, keeping track of things. So
Well, they're a bit different because one of them is like a static database of all of the possible interactions that can possibly occur in the game, which I would imagine would be generated, and then the other is what's it called? Thought just escaped my head.
Just in real time, yeah, like visually seeing your combat or whatever. Yeah, but I mean, just the general idea though of being able to go back and review some of these things as was kind of the,
that it's happens, you know, with the people that are there per server. You're right. Yes, that's the part I meant to say. Then the other one, sharing UI layouts. Yes. That was one of the nicest things to have in Planet Side 1. If a buddy came over, you're going to kind of watch them play, kind of spot over their shoulder. They could just load they could bring their whole interface file on a floppy disk if you still used those back in like 2003, which I did. A 3.5 inch floppy disk and pop it on, and you just load your settings, all your key mapping, all of your controls, your sensitivity, your colors, everything was all included there. That was fantastic. That's the best.
I gotta admit, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know sharing UI was a thing.
Well, some games do it illegally or irresponsibly. That was one of the biggest reasons why a while back when I was a forum moderator for Dungeon Fighter, the main reason people lost their accounts and lost all of their stuff is that they installed a skin like a Pokemon mod that used an injector so you could have it change the UI. And it's like, oh, you mean you used an injector, so you basically just gave somebody access to your gameplay and key logging on all of that? Wow, that's brilliant. So yeah, that yeah, it's nice to actually be have it as a formal feature that doesn't break the game or get you hacked. So I figure it should be broken down, the ability to share UI, broken down into different categories. Like a general category that would be your colors and styling, your the scaling and proportions, the placement and size of common windows, other option settings, menu settings, colors, other language, whatever, specific settings that you want to be able to recall, as well as the specific sort of settings menus for each of the different archetypes. So instead of just having it that you're setting it up for the archetype that you're playing, if you want to be able to change to different archetypes and use the same interface, instead of having to create a character of each type and make that, maybe you're able to use a tool or something to configure them, but then be able to have each one saved out separately. So you have the general settings and one for each of the archetypes that you want to be able to recall. You can kind of save it as a package and send it as a zip or maybe over the game in some sort of way. Then somebody else will be able to load up that interface and be able to put it on whatever characters they have, because it'll be able to fit all the archetypes. That was the one thing that they said was the considerations, that not all the archetypes will have access to all the windows. So I figure, well, get all of the general stuff in one category and have the archetype specific stuff in a separate one. You can just manage it that way. So that would be lovely to see. And of course, they could actually be stashing that data on their side too, so they have like a log of user inputs and interface and what sort of common things people use to set up. So they've got a little bit more information on how people like to configure.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one thing that kind of threw me off a little. Actually, there were two things from this stream that kind of threw me off a little. I'll touch on them both real quick here. One was the ability to add extra bars.
Action bars.
Yeah, extra action bars. So it's not that you're going to be able to have more actions available to you at a time. I believe there's still going to be a limit to 8 or 10 or whatever that you can have available. But then instead of having the Alpha 1 trade-off of either you have an ability there or you have an item there, but you don't have extra room for items, there will now be the ability to have item action bars and things to be able to access other things, maybe emotes, maybe conversation pieces that you frequently use or whatever, your formal greetings. Stuff like that, I would imagine, is now what we're going to have on those additional with the access of those additional slots. So if you like all of your abilities in 1 through 5 and shift 1 through 5, and then you have your items and your emotes on like 6 to 0 and the other stuff, then you can set it up that way. You've got all of your stuff in the action zone, and your less active items and things are a little bit out of reach. So you can click them if you need or whatever. So that's it's nice that they're actually adding that. Actually, there were two other things that kind of surprised me from this one. The no freehold stashing. Everybody thinking that while they're corrupt, they can just go stash stuff on their freehold. You apparently can't access stashes whatsoever while you're on your freehold. While you're on any freehold.
When you're corrupt, yeah. That surprised you?
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if we'd had the official word on that one, but that's great. That definitely makes it a threat. If you go and get yourself turned red, resolving that without getting killed is going to be really, really damn hard. You're going to be really penalized in the process, and you're not going to be able to offload any ill-gotten gains with ease.
You're basically treated like a monster, and monsters can't store stuff in freeholds.
It definitely, to me, seems like the best way to go then to deal with gankers is just let them kill you. Just do the dance. You might not be the one to get your resources back off the person. Someone else will kill them, and they won't keep those resources.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and this is probably stupid to ask this. So when the corrupted player can work off corruption through killing PvE mobs, right? There's some sort of gaining experience out in the world. So is that just a combat-based experience, or is that any activity that gives experience to the node? So my question,
that's a good question.
My question being, could they go to their freehold, taking whatever they just hijacked from everyone and just craft it away, and at the same time work off their corruption because they're giving experience to the node through crafting or whatever whatever that process is. So
that's a good question.
I have a feeling you won't be able to craft, but we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Just looking for all the ways that somebody can circumvent this process, which there's an awesome thread on the forums about that we can talk about next week.
And then the other thing, I guess I didn't fully realize it, or maybe it wasn't fully clear to me. Sanctioned events don't have the same open world death penalty as Castle Siege, Node Siege, Caravans, and Guild Wars. That is great. That means you can do a gathering caravan where you go out with a caravan that you pack light, and then you just use the caravan as you guide it around as you gather. And even if the caravan gets taken down, until you have been unbound from the caravan contract, you're not going to lose any of the stuff you gathered along the way. And so I am interested to see how caravans are going to be used to prevent resource loss on death for crafters that want gatherers that want to kind of reduce the risk of being ganked. And if that's the sort of thing that'll just manifest naturally, is you get 20 gatherers together and they all just get a caravan and go out gathering together.
Mm-hmm.
Be a good protective factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that you can use a contract to legitimize your activities and prevent the death penalty that it makes it such an interesting sort of thing. Now, the thing I wonder is, how does it apply to boats going into the open waters? If you're on a chartered boat that has a destination that's set going from point A to point B, and it gets attacked and you die, because this was a chartered boat that's going on a predefined path, are you going to suffer the penalty, or are you going to be safe from those death penalties? Boat's still been destroyed. It's still going to have to be rebuilt, whoever's boat it was. But this is the equivalent of, doing a caravan at sea going across open waters. Would it have that same contract protection against your death losses?
There are naval caravans, right?
So
if it's a naval caravan, then it would be same rules as a on-land caravan.
Do naval caravans get immediately rebuilt? Do they also have protection from open sailing death penalties?
Naval caravan would have the same statuses as an online caravan.
No, I guess you're right. If your caravan gets destroyed, you're gonna have to rebuild a boat. Or that caravan's been botched, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, we are almost out of time. Actually, we're over. So
yeah, that's kind of why I was trying to race through the last little bits there.
That's all right. We got a lot of. I think we have a good half or more of the questions left over for next time. So.
For sure.
I did want to ask y'all's opinion of one thing, because this was a thread on the forum. It's the reason why I titled the show like I did. What are your thoughts on requiring a valid phone number for an account? So, this is done. Gosh, I've been trying to do Throne and Liberty. They did their final test in Korea, and you have to have a phone number, an actual number that they can verify. So, couldn't obviously do that. As a way to just prove who you are. I saw in the thread, I guess maybe it was Counter-Strike had implemented something like this, and the number of bots that just drops tremendously. Now the hope here is also, with requiring a sub, you're just going to naturally reduce bots in that way, because they're going to have to spend money up front in order to get on. But in addition to that, by requiring a phone number, my thought was that would be great for bots, getting them out, making things a little bit more organic. But I'm also someone, since it's probably never going to happen, when we did our COE show, like I had all along had two accounts. I had a front forward facing relationship, and then I had an under the table relationship with some other people through means of a different account. So I don't think I would be able to do that unless I had two phone numbers, which is the downside that I see in this sort of model. So.
Well, let's say you can use your phone number for more than one account. For example, if I'm a parent who has multiple children, I might want to do that.
Yes, but how do you verify how many children you have, right? That's the point, because you could say, well, I have 4 kids, and then you could just create bot accounts along the way.
Because if one of them gets banned for botting, all of them get banned.
Yeah. I mean, that's a way to go about it. But it was an interesting question.
Sorry, we can't play anymore because Jimmy got a program from somebody that got us all banned.
Yeah, I'm generally against phone numbers being a form of restriction or identification for games, video games. I don't like it for Facebook or
How do you
other social media platforms either.
how do you guys do your web two-factor authentication? Do you do it with your phone?
Usually, yeah.
I do, but with Authenticator. I don't know that I mean, it comes through my phone, but I think I'm most of them
Yeah.
using an authenticator, not with my phone number specifically necessarily.
So
Depends on platform.
I kind of feel like the authenticator exists specifically to bridge the gap there. So you can have something that's associated with a phone and device, but not
Yeah,
using your phone number.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that would probably be more valid to do something like that.
Well,
That's what I would prefer.
yeah. I mean, it has the added benefit I put in chat there that I think as you start tying personal, numbers and identity to someone, I think you're going to start to also drive down at least some of the sort of hate speech and the negativity that can kind of come across with anonymous accounts. If there's in the back of my mind, oh, well, they have my phone number. There's just an easier direct to who it is kind of path. Versus, well, I can just download a free to play client, VPN in, create a fake email, and then, you're likely not going to know unless I make a purchase. So, and even then there's ways
Well,
to make purchases anonymously. So
also, as someone who likes to have alts, sometimes those are, um, especially for social media stuff. Like I might have a separate account for different characters, social media accounts for different characters. Then I don't want all of that stuff going through a, f- a phone number or associate it with one phone number. Um, so
just an interesting idea. So generally I'm against it, not necessarily because of privacy issues, but because of the limiting potentially to one account. So,
mhm.
well, all right. I think that is it for our show this week. We will be back here next week and going over more Ashes of Creation discussion. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you next Sunday.
Yeah. See you then, everybody. Have a good one. Happy Light Fall.
Peace.